Ambassador, welcome. It's a pleasure to have you on the newscast.
Thank you, Ivan. It's nice to be back in Skopje.
As I remember, we have recorded our previous interview in a period of preparation for the constitutional changes about the Prespa agreement. Now we are also in a period for preparation the constitutional changes, but for the agreement with Bulgaria. What do you think about the problems in between?
Well, I think Prespa was a resounding success, and for my part, and the part of the United States, we were very focused on as soon as the name issue was resolved, as I said many times as ambassador, North Macedonia will move into NATO membership. And at that time, of course, I was at the European Command and then became Assistant Secretary of State for Europe and prioritized moving the North Macedonia NATO membership forward. And I think you may recall that once the final ratifications were finished in Spain, we were already facing the COVID pandemic, and at the State Department I insisted that we receive that ratification. It was signed by the King of Spain. It was sent by express DHL plane to Washington. The Spanish ambassador came and was the last official visitor to the State Department. You've probably seen the pictures. I had a mask, the ambassador had a mask. He brought that ratification to deposit it with the United States. We are the official depositor of the North Atlantic Treaty, the Treaty of Washington, making at that time North Macedonia the 30th member of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. I'm very proud of that moment because I think it was important for North Macedonia, for this country, and you've been a terrific ally. I know that from my friends, my colleagues in the military, at the State Department, at NATO. You have done everything one would expect from an ally in terms of capabilities, in terms of deployments, in terms of exercises. This year, of course, right now you're chairing the A5, Adriatic 5 group. You'll have, I believe, defense ministers visit. You'll have chiefs of defense visiting. And of course, on a broader sense, in terms of security, as chairman in office of the OSCE this year, it's a very important role. And so I'm very pleased, and I think all of the citizens of North Macedonia should be pleased that you are a full member of NATO.
Yes, it's correct about the NATO, but we have bigger expectations about the European Union integration. And as the last public opinion poll shows, the credibility of some parts of the international community have lost the credibility in the people's side in Macedonia. Can we bring back the confidence in the people about whole this process?
Well, of course, the United States is not a member of the European Union, and I, even now as a private individual, cannot determine that or comment on the process particularly. I believe, and I know the United States still believes, that North Macedonia should be in the European Union. We've believed that for a long time, that was the solution, not just for this country, but for the Western Balkans, to be democracies strongly knitted together through these institutions of Euro-Atlantic security and prosperity, including the European Union. And so I hope that process will also move forward. The key is to use the opportunity in the process to make the reforms necessary to focus on the economic benefits so that everyone can ultimately benefit. That's where you should be, is firmly in Europe.
You have mentioned the reforms, and it's obvious that we need a lot to do on the field about the reforms. The most problematic about Macedonia is the judiciary sector, the rule of law, and the fight against corruption. The current ambassador of the United States Ambassador Aguilar had a letter to the government and the people who are working in the judiciary saying that she is disappointed about the results after so much money that the United States government has spent on the reforms in Macedonia. Are you disappointed with the results?
Well, I think most importantly is the people are disappointed with the results. I hear this from friends, I hear this from people on the streets, even just visiting for a few days. They are frustrated and dissatisfied about the progress on corruption. This is not about parties. This is about a decision by the country as a whole, everyone together, to say we're going to change this. And the United States has supported that. The kinds of comments that I'm hearing Ambassador Aguilar has made reflect the same comments I was making as ambassador 15 years ago. We want to invest in the reform efforts through our various programs to help with judicial reform, to educate, which is vitally important. And I think we've put forward something like $560 million over many, many years to help with this effort. It's an investment, and we want to see a return on that investment, and the beneficiaries of that investment should be all the people of North Macedonia to feel more confident in their processes. It's vitally important. We have these debates in the United States, other countries do too, but you all together need to make the effort to see a change and a different approach.
Something else that is also very important topic in the country is the agreement with the U.S. corporation Bechtel about the building of the corridors 8 and 10 new corridors in Macedonia. I'm not going to ask you about the agreement and the details because I know that you don't have information, but I want to know how do you comment that the government is keeping this agreement as confidential? Is it good to have this as qualification? This is confidential when we are speaking about spending the money of the Macedonian citizens?
Well, I think there are processes and procedures that are set in place according to laws, rules, regulations on these things. I don't know them myself intimately, but that's what should be the litmus test on these things. What I do know is that infrastructure is important, and I think I've heard about this for many years too. Let's get some of these projects done. I know Bechtel simply as a company that has a very strong reputation globally, but certainly in the region. And it would be nice to see some of these projects that I remember being talked about not only when I was ambassador, but even years before when I first came to North Macedonia and worked in our embassy in the 1990s. So follow the rule of law. Follow the procedures, do what is necessary, but it would be great to see real progress, and I understand why the people want to see those projects underway and completed.
Just for the end, what about the big picture? We have the war in Ukraine. As we know, Trump and Biden are going for a second mandate. What do you expect?
Well, what to expect is always the question. I, of course, now am in the private sector, having told Secretary Blinken that after 31 years I was ready to move on. I work in advisory with companies, with foundations, and I also work with a think tank, the Wilson Center, focusing on Europe's role globally. We call it the Global Europe Program. We also often look at the Balkans. Certainly we look at this tragic situation in Ukraine where Putin has launched an illegal, unnecessary, unprovoked war against the people of Ukraine who have shown tremendous courage and perseverance under this. Putin could stop this war at any day. If Putin decides to stop, the war ends. If Ukraine stops, Ukraine ends. And that's why we have come forward to support the Ukrainian people in their efforts to defend themselves, to defend their sovereignty, their territorial integrity. And what we see every day is a terrible violation of international law, of all of the principles on which we've come together over many decades in the post-war period. And so that's a tragedy, but it's great to see allies and friends of Ukraine stepping up, including North Macedonia, to support the people of Ukraine. And I think that's something of which people can be proud, and we should work together to see stability return to the broader transatlantic region. And I just say every day I am very proud and very pleased that North Macedonia is a full member of NATO.
Hope that our next interview will be when Macedonia is part of the European Union, not so far, hopefully. Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you, Ivan.